singling. That's right. I am singling the 11 Arrival.
Matrew is second ahead to the gray Arrival 3 deep. Then there's 4 across the track lined up. Timeline, Spike Sherrill, Super.
Disappointment. The one thing that this horse has done well is compete in mile and 1/16 races at Oaklawn. This horse is 3 for 5 at that distance on the track. So definitely a horse for course angle here with the 11 Arrival.
Gravity, and they leave the backstretch, and it's bunching up. Curlin Rules. Matrew, a 3 wide Arrival, a 4 wide. Super Dude, a 5 wide. Colonel's Dark Temper. Timeline stays at the rail. He's got a chance on the front end. The 10-year-old Matrew has put his head in front. Still lots of work to do, though, for him. Arrival is outside. Curlin Rules is inside.
Came off of a $40,000 starter allowance score on March 20th. A good mid-race move from Thompson and just blew everybody away.
And Arrival has taken the lead. Matrew has backed out. Curlin Rules battles on at the rail. To the center of the racetrack goes DeGrom and Kurlov, but it's Arrival and Curlin Rules.
Given that I'm taking the approach that this could pay a lot of money, I am singling where I have my strongest opinion, which is what I always recommend doing, and I know Andrew does as well. We want to single where we have our strongest opinion. It just so happens my strongest opinion happens to be in the claiming race at $50,000 on a 15-to-1 morning line.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's certainly a separator single, and if you hit, you're going to get paid.
Curlin Rules trying to battle back inside of Arrival, and he's gonna get the job done. Curlin Rules.
That certain track in Ohio is a place called the Van Wert County Fair. It's right on the Indiana-Ohio line, and it makes Mount Pleasant Meadows look like Churchill Downs in comparison. Now, Van Wert does not have an inside rail, also 4 furlongs. And they have in the past run both thoroughbred quarter horse and harness on the same day, if we want to talk about the quality of the racing surface here. So the first year that I went to Van Wert was in 2011. I'd heard some of my friends from Mount Pleasant had run down there. I'd seen the pictures, and this seemed like absolutely my jam. So I'm watching the horses go through the post parade. One comes out of the paddock, and a puff of smoke comes out of this guy's head. I'm taking pictures, and I zoom in, and the jockey is smoking a cigarette in the post parade. Not something you would see at Keeneland, Santa Anita, Churchill Downs. And I'm just absolutely flabbergasted by this. And the jock goes on. He presumably, there's a picture right there. Jock smoking the cigarette in the post parade. And this was something I looked forward to after this point. So the next year, I come back expecting the same thing. The jockeys are not afraid to smoke in public at this track, by the way. Even today, and smoking is bad for you kids. Don't smoke. But this is just something that completely floored me. The very next year, I'm waiting for the jockey to come out of the post parade. I see the puff of smoke come out of his head, and I'm ready for him this time. I've got my camera all lined up. I'm ready to shoot my future Eclipse Award-winning picture. I have him in the frame, and then my camera dies. It dies dead. This isn't just like batteries are dead, I need to recharge it. Like my camera was in the ground at this point. And Van Wert comes but once a year. Labor Day, every single year. And I was without my camera during my one shining moment, and that was a bummer. But I got to see something that most people don't get to see.
All right, so you can see Andrew's horse is way out here on the front end, hugging the rail, everything you want to be, in hand, no problems, looks like pulling away from the rest of the field. And we're going to stop down here at the 300-meter mark. And again, we've got a stack of horses behind, but I can't tell you, which one of these is running well enough to actually make.
Nobody's moving. Nobody's moving.
Well, that's part of it. Is it's stopped down so we can talk about it. But
no, I mean like nobody's moving from the back of the pack is what I'm saying. Like, I know it's frozen. No, but no, but nobody's coming. Like nobody's running well here except for the horse on the lead.
Yep. So we're going to roll it here in a second. As, again, Andrew's horse all alone on the lead. And you're feeling pretty good about this at this point, Andrew, correct?
I was jumping up and down, turning cartwheels.
Okay, so we're going another 100 meters. And nobody has made an inch of ground on this horse. And this horse does not appear to be stopping. I can't tell you, like, watching this race, and I had the horse on my ticket as well. I had a little more coverage than Andrew did, but home free. I mean, you don't see anybody that could possibly catch this horse, Gino, do you?
No. They're just all kind of going up and down behind. You know, there's nobody that's like separated themselves. It almost looks like the horse down on the inside, he's already it's like he put that one away, who seemed like that was his biggest rival at that point.
So the one shifted out in the middle of the stretch, and somehow we'll get up and catch the 10.
Ow!
Oh, God.
And I'm going to hold here. We're going to watch this for a minute here and get the replay, because obviously they were good enough. They found the one, and were able to give the hero shot to them. But the replay of the race, even the camera operators were so set on the 10. You'll see a replay coming to the wire here in a second, and you're just going to see the 10. You will never see the 1 in this actual footage of the end of the race. The 1 is gone. The 1 is way to the right of the screen, and yeah, it's a still of the 10. Andrew, I do have to see if you're still with us here, because your video is just excellent here. I don't know. Can you?
Oh, Jesus! No, I'm still here. I had the past performances up because I was very, very interested in what you had to say. Now, some would say that right now I've never looked better. Some would say that this is as good as I have ever looked. So you know what? We're going to roll with this for as long as the video will tell us to roll with it.
Whatever
now,
you're doing, keep it up, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, I don't have a clue. This is a mile and 3/4 race.
This is perfect.
Now, last year, the number 11 in your program won this race. That horse has looked horrible, absolutely dreadful in 2020. You look at the horse that you like, JD. Yes, this horse was very impressive at a mile and 3/4 many years ago. It's 10. I have no confidence in any runner in this field. Absolutely none. I have as much confidence in any runner in this field as I do of my video coming through loud and clear.
He loves chaos.
Yes, I do. As you can tell, I'm running towards this. And you know what? If I get the first 3 legs home with both Bafferts and maybe a little Price in leg 2, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to relax, I'm going to drink my Arnold Palmer, and I am going to enjoy watching horses who are not bred to go a mile and 3/4 tire themselves out and hope like hell we get a Price home. And so I'm hitting the all button of glory in here, and I'm hoping this ticket works out better than the ticket that I played last week that singled in the first leg, ended with the all button of glory, and wound up, hosing me out of several $1,000s. I saw a tweet, and I wish I could remember who wrote it because it was so poignant, and it's true about a lot of things in this game. It said something along the lines of horse racing would prefer mediocrity from a section of people within their box rather than excellence from people they're not necessarily familiar with or not necessarily backing or weren't their call as far as who gets over with the audience, who doesn't get over, whatever. Right. And that's true on a lot of levels, because one of the things you mentioned in your podcast, you go the first floor of a track, that's everybody. That's a wonderful place. You see everybody. You see everything.
It's disgusting, but it's wonderful.
Yes. You go up to the second floor, a little different. You go up to the third floor, like I did at Saratoga every day on the way to the press box. And the only people of color I saw some days were Siena basketball players who were either hosts or waiters or ushers or what have you. And it was, and looking back, yeah, somebody should have said something. And that's where I take a little bit of responsibility for that, because someone should have said something. And I was there every day and I didn't say anything. And that's something that, looking back on it, I'm like, I've got a medium, I've got a platform. Why didn't I do something with it? And that's something that I'm resolving to do. And that's something that I think a lot of people would be served very well by doing. It's just a matter of listen,
And if you see something that's wrong, don't give anybody a free pass.
And even with something like this, I feel like I said before, you guys, you have only so much power and influence, right? You can only control this little box that we're in right now. That's all. And so within this little box that we're in right now, I guess the only challenge that I have, I feel like that people, just everyday people like yourselves can accept is that there are Black people that can handicap. Yeah. That there are Black trainers, there are Black jockeys. Mike, if you're going to have guests on your show, you have to step outside of that and be like, wow, I know there's a guy that I saw at the track that kicks ass. I know there's a guy that I saw at the handicapping tournament, just because it would be more diverse. Because some Black people will be like, well, why should I do that? What if he's not a good handicapper? Okay, well, then find one that is. Like, they put a tremendous amount of pressure on me because I'm not a good handicapper. And then I'm the only Black guy. So then that gives people so many different angles to fuck with me. And I'm like, dude, I'm the best host you've ever seen in your fucking life. There are things that go on in my brain that you have no idea how I'm coming up with that and how I'm getting from this spot to this spot. Like, I'm here for this skill set. I'm not here as a handicapper. I'm learning to handicap, but I'm here for this skill set. Lafitte Pinkai III can't fucking handicap, but he's the best host I've ever seen. He's there for that skill set. That's what we do. Now, it so happens that he has a name and a legacy that goes with it, but that dude's friggin' awesome. Just with his skill set. He's amazing.
Love that guy.
But nobody tells him to fucking handicap. No one's sending him emails because he didn't pick the winner. Nobody's doing that. That's the whole weird thing about people in this whole world. And then we get into this sport. And I've never in my life had a Black person send me an email or a message saying, dude, you can't handicap. Not one. We all know I can't. But they would never attack me with that. But every person that does is white, and they use that as some sort of thing to try to bring me down. And I'm like, I'm not here for that. I'm the host.
Yeah.
I tossed a commercial break. What is your problem?
It's like you bring up a horse to drive the discussion, and they take that horse that you mentioned and they say, oh, well, that must be his pick. No, that's the controlling speed of the race that's 20-1. That doesn't have a chance, but it's an important talking point to set up your co-host, and they obviously take liberties with that. And that's why I think the people that have been real TV people that have come on that side of the coin and done what you've done, obviously learning the game as you went, as you knew TV, and they needed people, a mixture as they started that network. And those, Greg Wolf obviously has gone off and done all the stuff with Naira and FS1, and he's doing things in his lane there as a TV guy that's learned racing over time. That's something that we now don't necessarily see with that network. We see people that are kind of float, and that's kind of one of the more interesting things that might be a point of discussion as well, is the host one day is the handicapper the next, and blurring those lines also makes that a little difficult for everybody in relation to Twitter and social media.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing was always, who doesn't want to play the races? Like, who doesn't want to have an opinion and try to play? And so when we were starting the network, it would really frustrate me because, one of my bosses would be like, hey, don't give out picks. I'm like, I'm not trying to give out picks. I'm just trying to be part of the conversation. And so then I wouldn't give out picks. I would just kind of sit back and try to set my analyst up. But the weird thing about this is that an analyst, the worst thing that ever happened to handicappers was putting a camera on them. Because an analyst will get so wrapped up in their opinion and whether that horse wins. And I always felt like that's not your job. And I still tell my friends to this day, I told Matt Carothers, that guy's awesome. I'm like, your job is not to pick winners. Forget that. Your job is to give out good information. Your job is to do the research and convey everything that you have found and deliver that to the public. Hopefully they have enough sense where they can go, I like that. I'm going to agree with that. Or no, I don't like that. I'm going to stick with my horse. Your job is just to give them the information. Winners are a byproduct of that. If you get a winner, that's great. But for 10, 12 years, all the guy next to me cared about was, did they get a winner? And that's just not good TV. So then that forces me to kind of interject myself into the conversation. Well, what about this other horse? There's 10 other horses in the race, brother, not just your pick. There's 10 others. What about these horses? And then it makes for this whole contentious thing. Then it just didn't work. Whereas now and I felt it the other day with my partners, they're so open. Where I think somehow everybody figured it out. It's a conversation. Yeah. It's not just me setting you up to give your research. It's us having a conversation. And so now I'll be with Gabby Gaudet, and she's like, Ken, what do you think about this? I'm trying to find the speed. Have you found the speed yet? That's what the fuck we're supposed to be doing, is having a conversation back and forth. Yep. And then hopefully we get to the right horse. That's what the show is. It's called the show, man. That's what the show is all about. So I think that when people do certain things where they try to hold that host down or try to put you in this box, that's just another one of those things that people try to do to control you. And then when you throw race into it, it's a whole nother element where they want to keep you controlled in a particular box, and fuck all that.
Earlier this week, Tom VanMeter was outed as making racist comments on a Facebook page. Tom VanMeter, a big player in the breeding game, one of the breeders of American Pharaoh, among other big-name horses, big-ticket horses. And the remarks that he made were repulsive. They were scary in the nature in which they were made, talked about putting people of a certain color back in cages. It was bad. We condemn that on this show. We condemn that everywhere, in every possible way. And there are a number of racing institutions out there that should be commended for some of the stances that they have taken. Keeneland, for instance, will not associate with Tom VanMeter, will not offer Tom VanMeter horses in their upcoming sales. Kudos. You did the right thing. I'm going to challenge a couple of organizations. I'm going to challenge Fasig-Tipton, who has said nothing about this, to do the right thing. I'm going to challenge OBS to do the right thing. This is not hard. This is not complicated. We cannot have people that think this way, people who act this way in this game. And JD, I don't know about you, but the apology that he issued to me stunk to high heaven. It seemed like he wasn't sorry for what he said. It seemed like he was sorry he got caught. When you bring up the fact that he said on a private Facebook page, bullshit. I'll say that. Bullshit. No, there is no place for people who think like that, people who say these things, people who act this way, and people who enable these things. We talked about this on the show last week that we did with Ken Rudulph. We didn't do that for points. We did that because we understand there's a problem. There are problems in racing, there are problems in society, and those problems get worse when good people do nothing. So please, Fasig, OBS, do something. We had a sports clerk, JD, that I'm not going to out on this podcast. I'm not going to do it. I have too much respect for the guy, and he made an honest mistake. He's not a racing guy. In an online story, he called the Haskell the Eddie Haskell Invitational. It was bad. None of us did it. None of the full-timers did it, but the Saratogian was associated with that for a while. The next day, that story is pinned up next to the men's room in the Saratoga press box. I let it stay there for a day. I let people have their fun. The next day, I go and I make a big show out of tearing it down and throwing it in the garbage. People saw it, but nobody said anything to me about it. It's just one of those things where I think everyone acknowledged, okay, I let you guys have your fun. Now it's back to business because I had nothing to do with that. A little while later in the meet, I'm in the press box and Bill Heller walks up and he says, well, how are things going at the Saratogian? I look around and I whisper, put it this way, Eddie Haskell hasn't been seen in 2 weeks. He laughed and laughed really hard. It was a really cool moment that came rushing back when I heard that his time at the Daily Gazette was done. It's always sad to see a longtime turf writer retire or, in some cases, unfortunately, be forced out by the realities of the journalism industry, because guys like that are a reminder of when the all-media title at Saratoga really meant something. There were guys that poured everything they had into trying to find that one little nugget of information that nobody else in the press box knew. And as a message to everybody out there that wants a career in horse racing, doing the sort of things that we're doing the sort of things that I've been fortunate enough to do over the course of my career, approach your work like that. Approach your work like guys like Bill Heller, guys like Nick Kling, guys like Tom Amello, guys like Russ Harris from the New York Daily News. There's a lot of guys that I could reel off that unfortunately are either retired or not with us anymore. Do your research, see what these people did, learn from them, and apply it to what you're doing. Bill Heller, if you're out there and you're watching, congratulations on a great career. Hope you're enjoying your retirement. You deserve it.
And I had, back in the 80s, I had a filly named Just Smashing. And she was a New Jersey bred, and she wound up winning 23 out of like 28 starts. She was amazing. Nobody could beat her. She was the best sprinting New Jersey bred in New Jersey. When I trained her, I thought she was awful. She never got out of a common gallop. I ran her in a race out of desperation because I couldn't train her anymore. I got tired of watching her work a half and 52, 5/8 and 105, put her in the starting gate, and she was a monster. So you're absolutely right. They go either way, and you could take all the signals. A horse can send you every right signal, and you're wrong. And a horse can send you every wrong signal, and you're right. And that's why most trainers have ulcers, because it's not a given. It's a living, breathing animal. And it's never a given until it's a given.
Whenever I hear people talk about the desire of racing to be more part of the mainstream, I always want to challenge them and say, no, you don't really want to be part of the mainstream, because mainstream coverage for mainstream sports, again, is good, bad, and indifferent. I'm sitting here, I've had CNN on, and they have had multiple segments on today about the Marlins and all their COVID positives, and that has led off segments all day. Do they want Del Mar on CNN for all of their jockey positives? Do they want to have to do a take with Jake Trapper about that? They probably don't. So if you want mainstream coverage, you better know that mainstream, again, real mainstream coverage is good, bad, and indifferent. You can't just pick and choose of, oh, I just want them to write something warm and fluffy about us and it's going to make our problems go away. The only thing that's going to fix your problems is actually fixing the problems. Crazy. I know.
Alicia, I don't know if you can tell, because I've been told I have a really good poker face. You nailed it. I have nothing further to add except for the fact that I have a story deep in the recesses of my mind that is going to come out once certain people retire, pass away, or step away from this game. In that vein, I cannot say it right now. I don't want to put anybody else in that kind of position, but just saying, story's there. I don't have an NDA. If you know what I'm talking about, you should be very nervous. And JD's on mute.
Oh, we lost him. Or do we get him?
We lost him. Don't make me tell that story. Don't make me do it.
First of all, I had no online experience before the pandemic. I am a live player my whole life. I'm not a professional player. I'm a recreational player. I've always been near a card room in Los Angeles for a while. So in order to play events, as I said, you have to be in Nevada or New Jersey. I live in Los Angeles. And I decided, as a change of pace, instead of driving all the way into Las Vegas, which is about a 4-hour drive for me, that I would go to the California Nevada state line, literally state line Nevada, it's called, and I would play at the casino there at Primm. I just thought it fit my personality more. Phil Hellmuth is he's the poker brat. He's got a million connections. He's a name dropper. He gets a comp suite at Aria on the Strip. If he just yells out fire, they bring him a fire. Whatever he needs, he gets. So he's in this multiple suite thing at the Aria high atop the Strip. I am in a $34 room at the Primm Valley Resort, $34 plus a resort fee of $15, playing in a non-smoking room, which felt like it was a RJ Reynolds factory. If this was a non-smoking room, I hate to see what a smoking room was like. And so I played out of this room in the two events. The thing about it now, because I'm not a very good player, it has been years since I cashed in both events, playing at State Line in this ridiculous environment. So next year, even when live poker comes back to the World Series, and there will be some online events, which they started to do a few years ago during the World Series, I'm going to play online events. I will not go into Las Vegas. I will stay at Primm and play the online events from State Line. I will never go into the Rio again because I was 2 for 2 at this godforsaken facility.
If it's not broken, don't fix it, right, Norman?
Everything in the room was broken, so I couldn't fix anything. But yes, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I scored 2 cashes in 2 events there, breaking my slump. So now I could be a Primm sponsor if they want me to endorse the place.
Leading up to the 2016 Breeders' Cup, I was working for an outlet that you, Nick Hines, might have heard of. And I was at Santa Anita leading up to the Breeders' Cup with all of the workouts and everything that's going on. And TVG had a crew of people, some of the best people in the game at that point. And Gary Young, the private clocker, was with us every morning. And I just sat next to him for 3 or 4 days. And what an education you get listening to someone and seeing the way they do things when they've been doing this for 40 years and they know the ins and outs of absolutely everything. Seeing him with the stopwatch and the tape recorder and the notepad, that taught me as much, maybe more, about anything in horse racing as any other experience that I have ever had. The other reason I bring this story up is the funny part. So this was during the 2016 World Series, which featured Gary Young's beloved Chicago Cubs. Neil Drysdale did something you never, ever, ever, ever do. Neil Drysdale walked up to Gary the morning after the Cleveland Indians took a 3-1 lead in the series. And Neil goes in this Pink Panther on helium voice, "How are your Cubs doing?" Gary goes, "About as good as your barn, Neil." And he goes up one side and down the other of Neil Drysdale, one of the great trainers that's living right now, the guy who camped in AP Indy and Fusaichi Pegasus. And he's looking at all of us with this look like, are you going to let this madman keep going? And all of us were like, yep, we're not stopping him. Keep going, Gary. And he punctuates this with about the greatest insult I have ever heard at a racetrack that's clean. The insult that he used was, I would bet on the Chicago Cubs coming back from a 3-1 deficit to win the World Series before I bet on a first-time starter from your barn.
That is great.
I'll keep that with me the rest of my life. Our guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway because that is just the kind of guy I am. He is one of the foremost authorities on horse racing in Australia and Hong Kong. We're excited to have him, and not just because he is a fellow member of the People Named Andrew who work in horse racing and have strong opinions club. Andrew Hawkins is here with us. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a great club to be a part of, and it's great to be joining you on the show. It's very exciting at this time of year here in Australia. There's so much going on, and can't wait for this card at Rose Hill on Saturday, Australian time, Friday night, your time. So let's bring it on, and hopefully we can find a couple of winners.
JD, be jealous. We have meetings every month, and we have T-shirts.
I wouldn't... Andrews around the world, I wouldn't be surprised with some of the Andrews I know.
I'm just saying there's one in New York that acts as our sergeant at arms.
Yes, he does.
Oh, that's classic.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Oh, that is fantastic.
The substance in question here is a painkiller. Horses are not as sound now as they were in generations past. Isn't the easiest fix to breed a better horse? That way we don't have to worry about giving them these medications. I'm just saying. I understand that the breeding industry and the racing industry don't necessarily have the same goals. And you know what? That's fine on paper. In practice, we wind up with horses running shorter and shorter time spans, not running as many races in that time period, not running races that are as long. The Jockey Club Gold Cup getting 5 horses? Really?
Yeah.
Just saying. If that doesn't scream, we need to breed a sounder horse, I don't know what will. The problem is those horses sell for $20,000 at sales, and the horses that reek of brilliance, you can add a 0 onto that, and money talks. These are the days where champions get crowned. These are the days where, if you know what you're doing, you can make a lot of money. I'm still writing thank you notes to Blame for holding off Zenyatta in the 2010
How did you do that?
Still got it. Still got it. I haven't worked with her for 3.5 years. I had to do that at some point. Yes!
Oh, no.
And you know what I just did? I just assured myself of hate tweets from anybody who watches to this point in the show. So you know what? That's just fine and dandy. A couple of years ago, you were very proud of this. You bought a drone.
Yeah.
You bought the drone.
Oh, I know where you're going with it. Yeah.
And you flew your drone where, Don?
Into my neighbor's roof. Yeah.
How did that happen?
It was not a big fancy $1,000 drone. This was my learning process. Okay, this was the first drone, the baby drone. Yeah.
So you're
I've had 3 drones. Okay, I flew that one into the roof. Thanks for outing me on that, by the way. I had to go over there and sheepishly ask for it back, and it was actually in the trash. They had just that day had gotten it off the roof somehow, or it fell down, and they had put it was on the top of the trash when you open the lid. And I said, okay, thank you. And I kind of just went back home, felt really bad about it. Got another drone, learned how to fly it, got really good at it, was walking around the neighborhood flying it with my wife one night. We were walking the dog and got it up a little too high. Again, it was a little better drone, but still not a professional drone, and didn't have GPS, and it got away from me, and it's somewhere in this neighborhood. I don't know where it's at. It flew off, and I never saw it again. We keep looking in trees for it. But anyway, so I've lost 2 drones. My third drone now is a professional one. It hooks up to 17 satellites in the sky. I've taken some pictures from my YouTube channel, and in fact, I need to get it back out. But the FAA says I have 30 days from, I think it was yesterday or the day before when I got the email, to renew my registration. So I need to do that. Costs all of $5. Woo. So I need to get that re-registered and then take it out in the mornings. But I'm a little leery. I can fly it around the track, but they make me call the surveillance department before I put it up in the air, because I did it one time and didn't call them, and they started panicking. They said, there's this orange thing flying around. What is it? Something flying around the track. And so the GM called me and said, hey, I don't mind you doing that, but please call surveillance and let them know, so when they're looking at the cameras, they don't freak out when this thing flies around. So I need to get that back up there again. But thanks for calling me out, Andrew. I really appreciate that.
It's why I'm here, Don. Our buddy Joe Nevills, there's a cat that lives in the neighborhood that has been the subject of several of his social media posts. Joe has taken to calling him the little old man from next door. Pete, you are a little old man from next door truther, and I would like to hear your theories on this incredibly important matter.
Well, you're going to get me to say some things on this. So riddle me this. Is a crazy cat man of interest to the general public on social media? No. A crazy cat man is not interesting. Somebody posting pictures of their cat is not mainstream interesting. However, posting pictures of the neighbor's cat, who you have slowly but surely earned the trust of, oh, well, that's interesting. Calling that cat old, oh, well, that's interesting. So he has, because of his wrestling fandom, devised this character in this storyline because he wants Facebook posts to get 70, 80, 90 likes, because he has to be interesting, and just posting pictures of his cat is not going to get the job done. So he has created this mystique about this little old cat from next door that is not only not from next door, he's not old, and he is living in his living room. And you notice that the cat is always inside when they post. Now that, oh, he's found his way inside. Well, I got news for you. If it's not your cat, you don't bring him inside.
Oh, we're going to need to get a response from Neville.
We're doing a show for 5 people now, and it's great. I'm including Natalie, so that's 5. Yeah, I'll use my last thought, Jim, to say something to Rachel, and that is that I do apologize for all those wrestling GIFs that you end up getting tagged in. I'm not saying that it's going to stop.
You're one of those.
I'm not going to necessarily stop, but I wanted to apologize.
I just realized you are in on that crap. In your original message, you said it, and I completely forgot about it because I was like, yay, Jim! Podcast is going to be so fun. Have you seen this, Jim?
No.
Oh, my God. Bill Downs, that boy, he knows what he does on purpose because he knows I manage the social media. He will literally wait until at night when he knows I'm not, on it anymore. And he starts a random out of nowhere. And you can go back and look. It's like a wrestling thought. And then it's like, but Racing Rachel wouldn't know it, or some random thing just to tag me in it. And I wake up in the morning and I have 67,000 notifications to go about on WWE wrestling that goes, I know the only sport I know absolutely nothing about, not one iota, goes straight over my head, and I'm literally reading it as gibberish. And these guys like JD and Champagne, think it's hilarious to put GIFs of sweaty men in tights on my Twitter feed. That's what they do to torture me, and they think it's hilarious.
JD, just so you know, if it makes you feel any better, all right, I've met the Big Show in an airport before, and my daughter thinks Roman Reigns is the most gorgeous man on the face of the earth. And Rachel's all mad now.
What, are you speaking English? I don't know what you're saying. I don't know who these people are.
I have a 13-year-old son. Come on. Of course.
I remember Goldberg. I remember The Rock. I remember the old school ones because I have a little brother, so we used to watch it all the time. But now I know nothing.
Yeah, so Bill likes starting this stuff. He likes tagging Rachel in wrestling GIFs, and he likes tagging a bunch of us for random mischief, hijinks, and shenanigans. JD and I are some of them. I think Pete Aiello and Gino Buccola have both gotten in on this. Bill,
Darren as well.
Yep. What sparked this? How did this start? I'm at a loss for this. It's always hysterical, and knowing how it drives Rachel up a wall is pretty funny. But what was the origin of this?
Well, pretty much anything that gets Rachel uncomfortable is A-okay with me. No matter what it is. I mean, whether it's like I told you before, with her on the mechanical bull and falling on her head, that's funny right there. And one time, by the way, I almost had it recorded too. She was pregnant with her daughter, and she was trying to do something. It may have been when they were dumping water on heads and all that for the charity. I don't know what it was.
The Ice Bucket Challenge. Yeah, ALS. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it was specifically that, but she was doing something, and she was running around, and she fell on her butt while she was pregnant. I was like, oh my goodness gracious. I mean, obviously everything was fine and all that, but that's Rachel for you right there. But anything to get Rachel a little bit uncomfortable, I think that's the thing. And with the GIFs, you can it's just endless. I mean, just type in stuff and you got, usually 15 things to come up with. I think my favorite personal one is anytime I can put the boogeyman in there with the worms or whatever, that will usually just gross her out completely. So, and it extends to the show as well. In the Wire to Wire show, the first segment, it's usually Rachel and myself, and Nancy and Rachel, the second segment. And so my segments can be, if there's not that much going on, I don't have that many best bets. It could be 2-3 minutes, but somehow, we make the show last a little bit longer. And sometimes it goes off on tangents and whatnot. And then, I remember one time I had to go into great detail on how Moxley does his finishing move and how it's changed over the years. And so she's looking at me like, what am I doing? But, I'm serious enough most of the time. So when I want to get a little goofy or whatever and start talking about silly things, no matter if it's wrestling or something else or whatnot, that will happen.
You mentioned Luke.
Yeah.
A guy obviously taken from us way too soon, a guy that everybody we have talked to has had rave reviews about, and that's rare, especially in racing. It's rare to have someone who is so universally liked and even beloved. Talk to us a little bit about Luke and what he meant to you.
Yeah, the thing is you would have got the same mentions about him if he was, if he was still alive too. Like he was just the best. And, because he was someone of prominence in our particular industry, everybody was always very, admiring of him. But then you'd go hang out with him and all he'd want to do is talk about you or other people or other stuff. And so, just the first time I met him, this story throws somebody under the bus. So I always feel a little bit bad about it, but that's all right. I went down when I was first going to River Downs. I went to Turf Paradise because I went through the South because it was still early spring. And so I didn't want to go through the mountains. So I went to LA, went to Santa Anita, and then went Turf Paradise, Sunland Park, Lone Star, River Downs. And and actually Oaklawn too. It was an amazing like first trip. But I went in and introduced myself to Luke. I said, you know, I'm the backup. I was the backup of Portland, and I just got the job at River Downs. And he goes, oh, great. Oh, I feel bad telling the story already. So he let me hang out the whole day with him, and he was so cool. And like, you know, it's a tiny booth at Turf Paradise there. I mean, and so he let me hang out right outside, and he was just so awesome and nice. And, you know, we exchanged numbers. He's like, yeah, keep it up, you know, keep doing a good job. And so I'll see you down the road at some point. And so I get to River Downs, and on Preakness Day that year, he calls me and he goes, yeah, it's Luke Kruytbosch. I go, oh, hi, Luke, how are you? You know, he goes, I got to apologize. He goes, because there was another backup at Portland who was a very loud kind of caller and a sweetheart of a guy. That's why I hate telling the story, but it is kind of funny. And Luke goes, I honestly thought you were the other guy that was terrible. You're doing good. Oh, I feel so bad. I hope he doesn't watch this. But yeah, and then Luke, subsequent to that, when we would go back to Portland, Turf Paradise in Portland on Mondays and Tuesdays, that was kind of it for that, because that was before everybody started moving to Mondays and Tuesdays. He would call me like right after the changes and go, yeah, I want to order that roast beef lunch special you were just talking about there. And he would just do little prank calls. One time he called as Frank Stronach, which was great because Luke's voice was so Luke, he could never do an impression of anybody. Like he would do an impression of Robert Geller, Larry Colmish, you know, they're into the stretch. And it's like, that sounds like you saying they're into the stretch. But he called us Frank Stronach. He goes, yes, this is Frank Stronach. You're doing a great job for us. We're so, you know, and he would do that stuff like every week or two. But my favorite quick Luke story was at Churchill, you know, River Downs, we were always off Wednesday. So me and my buddy Vince Seister, who was friends with Luke, we would drive to Churchill to watch the races. And then afterwards, we'd always go out with Luke after the races. So one day we just decided to stay at one of the bars at Churchill, and Luke was never on TV on the Churchill signal, at least rarely. And so a lot of people didn't know what he looked like. So we're sitting at the bar, and, you know, and Luke enjoyed his time at the bar. And so he's a couple of pops in, and he was telling me about how there was a harness track in Quebec where the guy would call the race half in French and half in English. So, you know, onto the fire turd and and he's doing the impression. And some guy walks up behind him and goes, man, you sound just like Luke Kruytbosch. And Luke goes, I get it all the time. And the guy was dead serious. And then he just walked on like nothing was going on. I always thought that was great.